The Crimson Nexus was not a place for the faint of heart. Nestled in the lawless underbelly of Station Omega, the bar attracted the galaxy's most dangerous species: mercenaries, smugglers, and warriors who had seen more battles than most civilizations had seen sunrises. But even among this crowd of hardened killers, one figure commanded absolute respect and terror. Chloe stood at the far end of the bar, her 7-foot frame casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the dim neon lights. She was Vexina, a species known throughout the galaxy for their brutal efficiency in combat. Her obsidian exoskeleton gleamed like polished armor, forearms crossed in a posture that radiated menace. Razor-sharp mandibles clicked rhythmically as she surveyed her domain. For 3 standard years, Chloe had ruled the Crimson Nexus with an iron fist. The dent in the reinforced steel bar top was a permanent reminder of the Krellian bounty hunter who had challenged her authority. No one dared meet her eyes. No one dared raise their voice above a whisper when she was present. The entire bar operated under an unspoken code. Chloe's word was law. The door hissed open, and a figure walked in. He was human, a species most patrons knew of but few had encountered. Humans were relatively new to the galactic stage, their Earth having joined the Confederation only 2 decades prior. This one wore a worn leather jacket over combat fatigues, and his boots made confident thuds against the metal floor. His face was weathered, scarred, and carried the unmistakable look of someone who had danced with death more times than he could count. Connor approached the bar, seemingly oblivious to the deadly atmosphere that permeated the establishment. The bartender, a 6-eyed Tholian, nervously glanced between the human and Chloe, whose mandibles had stopped clicking, never a good sign. "Whiskey," Connor said simply, his voice rough but calm. "The real stuff, not that synthetic garbage." The bartender hesitated. We don't serve humans here. Boss's orders." His eyes darted toward KHLOE. Connor followed his gaze and finally noticed the towering Vexina warrior. For a moment, the entire bar held its breath. Then, impossibly, Connor smiled, a crooked, amused expression that sent ripples of confusion through the crowd. He turned fully to face Chloe, still smiling. "Boss doesn't like humans, huh?" Chloe's forearms unfolded, each hand flexing claws that could tear through starship hull plating. She took one heavy step forward, then another, until she loomed directly over the human. The height difference was comical. Shay could have stepped on him. "This is my bar." Chloe's voice rumbled like grinding tectonic plates. "My rules. Humans are weak, fragile. You don't belong here, little creature." The patrons watched with morbid fascination. Some had already started placing bets on how quickly the human would be broken. Connor looked up at her, entirely unfazed. Then he did something that shocked everyone present. He laughed. A genuine, hearty laugh that echoed through the silent bar. "Weak." Connor reached into his jacket. Every weapon in the bar was suddenly trained on him, but he simply pulled out a battered flask. "Lady, I've survived things that would give your nightmares nightmares." He took a swig, then held it out toward the nearest Patrona Krellian with 4 arms. "Hold my beer." The confused alien took the flask reflexively. "You think you're scary," Connor continued, his tone conversational but his eyes hard as diamonds. "I'm a human veteran. I fought in the Proxima Wars. You know what that means." Chloe's mandibles twitched. She had heard whispers of those chaotic wars on a death world called Earth. "It means," Connor said, stepping forward into her space rather than backing away, "I'm from a planet where everything tries to kill us from birth, where we invented weapons that could crack planets before we even left our solar system, where we're so stupid and stubborn that we fight wars in environments that would kill most species in seconds, deserts hot enough to boil water, jungles filled with venomous creatures, frozen tundras that freeze flesh in minutes." He took another step closer. Chloe, for the first time in years, felt something unfamiliar: uncertainty. "I've gone 72 hours without sleep while fighting enemies on 3 sides. I've dragged wounded comrades through territory so hostile that our own armor melted. I've seen friends die in ways you couldn't imagine, and I'm still here." His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. "So when you call me weak, fragile, and say I don't belong, you're right about one thing: I don't belong here. Because I'm way too dangerous for a place like this." The silence was absolute. Even the station's life support systems seemed to hold their breath. Then Chloe did something no one expected. She threw back her head and released a sound like grinding metal. It took the patrons a moment to realize she was laughing. "You have venom in your words, human," she said, respect creeping into her tone, "and fire in your spine." She extended one massive hand. I am Chloe, War Master of the 3rd Vexenar Legion. Connor gripped her hand without hesitation, his much smaller hand disappearing into her grasp. Connor Mitchell, Lieutenant Earth, Marines, retired. Bartender, Chloe's voice boomed. Get this warrior your finest whiskey, and if anyone in my bar has a problem serving humans, they can answer to me. As Connor finally got his drink, the bar slowly returned to its normal chaos. But something had fundamentally changed. The patrons looked at the small human with new eyes, not as prey, but as a predator who simply hadn't bothered showing his teeth yet. Connor raised his glass to Chloe, who returned the gesture with a vicious smile. You know, she said, sitting down beside him, I think I'm beginning to understand why the galaxy fears your species. Connor just smiled into his whiskey. Lady, you haven't seen anything yet. And in that moment, the Crimson Nexus gained a new legend, not of the alien warrior who ruled with fear, but of the human who walked in and reminded everyone why humanity was the galaxy's most terrifying newcomer.